Okay, I'm going to get out in front of this one. I know that you guys are sick of the trope of booktubers talking about tropes, but since I haven't done one yet, I guess I'm going to do it anyway. Hey, what's up, bookworms? Mike back today to talk some tropes and mostly the bad. Now, I want to say up front, guys, I like tropes. I might say that tropes are one of the things that brought me to fantasy. I love a Dark Lord. I love a Chosen One. I love a farm boy leaves home, a stranger comes to town. I love those Joseph Campbell hero's journey themes. Those are things, again, that brought me to this genre. But there are several things, and mostly more in modern fantasy, that have been really, really great at me lately. And I'm going to say, these are starting to be a little too much, and I would not mind seeing them go the way of the dodo. That would be really, really great. Go ahead and call it an early retirement if you were. But I know that these are going to vary from person to person. So if these are things you love, obviously I'm not taking them away from you. I'm not saying these suck. I'm saying these are things that I would like to see go away. So again, as always, with content like this, your mileage are going to vary a little bit, but these are some that really, really drive me crazy. Let's just go ahead and jump right into it. The main character is too overpowered and basically perfect. Now, by now, we're all quite familiar with the term Mary Sue, Gary Stu. Character can do no wrong. They pick up a sword. It's like they've used it their whole life. There's no training involved. They're just awesome. They're the best at everything, and everyone around them loves them. No questions asked. You know, you're sitting there as a reader like, why does this character love them? Just because. Just because they're just so awesome. Now, this is something that has really, really taken off, I think, in the last decade plus. It's gotten really, really popular. For me, I don't need my character to be the smartest person in the room. I mean, this story can function fine if they're the smartest person in the room, but I still want to see them struggle a little bit. Now, I don't need them to be a dipshit. You know, I don't need them to be completely clueless. But if our characters don't ever struggle, what's the goal? Why are we rooting for them? If we're always just like, they're going to get out of it because they always do. They always know how to get out of every situation. No problem, no sweat. They do it with flying colors. But for me, when you're combining that with some of these older tropes like, you know, Farm Boy Leaves Home, you're talking about a character that's 13, 14, 15 years old, and they go out into the world and they know how to do everything. They're the best ever. And it's like, what did you do back home? Nothing. I just plowed a field, but yet I know how to do everything. I'm the greatest swordsman that ever lived, you know, and sometimes they can play into because they're the chosen one, they can do these things. For me, I'm very, very tired of it, and I'm sick of it. Again, I don't need my characters to be wimps or weaklings or have no clue. I just want them to work hard to get to that point, to where you're like, okay, they've overcome these great obstacles. Again, take it back to Joseph Campbell. Follow the hero's journey. It's pretty much what fantasy was based on, and I think it worked for so long for a reason. Everyone is related or descendants from a royal family, noble blood of some sort. Now, it seems like ever since Darth Vader said, I am your father, there's been this need in all of fiction to make sure that our main character is either related to the main villain or some kind of noble blood. Now look, noble bastards can work out sometimes. Some of my favorite fantasy series ever are where the character is revealed to be a noble bastard, or is very upfront about it, they're a noble bastard. That works out sometimes. But when it gets to the point where it's like, wow, what a small universe, we're all related somehow, it gets quite exhausting. It's quite okay for a character to be no one. I think it's quite okay for their group of friends that they're questing with to be no one. I think that's fine. I think it actually works out great. Not everyone has to be, the antagonist is their parent or someone in their party was secretly a prince or a princess the whole time. We don't have to do that. I think it's quite okay for just every person to be able to go on an adventure, not have any kind of noble blood, not have some kind of great quest that they're going on because they were destined to do it. Now, again, that kind of falls into some things that I actually don't mind because, like I said, I do not mind Chosen One. I'm just quite tired of course you're related. I mean, because why not? Of course you are. You have to be. Or our protagonist is, always related to some king or queen. Now, that can still work sometimes. Like, I think as recently as like Memory, Sorrow, and Thorn, you do find out that our characters have some relation to some noble blood, and it works out. And I think that Memory, Sorrow, and Thorn still kind of falls into traditional fantasy for me, so I will allow those things. That doesn't bother me quite as much. But just the need to always being like, of course you're related. Of course. It's the only reason that this makes any sense. It just gets a little tiring after a while, as does making the villains sympathetic. Now, I want to say up front, I think it's quite good to know what the motivations are, outside of just the villain being a mustache-twirling bad guy evil just because the story needs it. I'm okay with them having a motivation. I am okay with looking at it from their point of view and saying, yeah, in their story, they don't look at themselves as the villain. I can see that, and it works out quite well. But I do say sometimes a story is only as good as its villain. And when you demystify them by giving me some backstory and showing why they are the way that they are, sometimes it doesn't really work for me and it hurts the character in the long run. Shortly, I don't need a prequel series, something, hey, this is why President Snow is actually not a bad guy. I don't need that anymore. I'm tired of it. I don't need you to explain why the villain is the way that they are. I think it's cool getting to know their motivations, obviously. What brought them to this point? That's fine. Again, shroud it in mystery a little bit. I believe in villain redemption. That's something that's really, really good with me. What I don't need is to see, hey, see, it's this cruel and punishing world that made them the way that they are. And see, it's because of a boy or a girl that they are the way that they are. And you're like, okay, this person is basically one step short of eating babies. And you're going to tell me it's because they got heartbroken one time? I don't need that. And I feel like it tries too hard. So again, I think there's a way to show a motivation for a character. I think about like Zod from Man of Steel. In that movie, you see why Zod is the way that he is. And I think that's great, but we didn't get some great, huge prequel series about, this is when they were kids, and Jor-El did this to him, and then it didn't do that. I didn't need that. And that's why it's the point where it's like, I like to know a villain's motivation. And I like to see, this is why they are the way they are. But I don't need to know, they were actually good. And you should actually see, you can actually say, I understand why they're doing what they do. No, I just want my bad guys to be bad. That's it. I want the big bad to be awful. And give me just give me some morsels or maybe some whispers of what happened to them in their past. When you kind of demystify a villain, they don't really have the same pain, at least not for me. It's something that I feel like it's just... Ever since Maleficent, I think Maleficent, they just kind of opened the floodgates. And they made that movie Maleficent, and everybody was cheering for Maleficent all of a sudden. And whereas my whole life she had been a villain, it's become just quite a thing to be like, we got to make the villains like sympathetic now. And see, they actually weren't that bad after all. No, I want my villains to be bad, with leaving the door open for, there's a redemption arc to be had there. It can be had. Darth Vader can come back from the dark side. I think anybody can. But, when you demystify Darth Vader, it's not quite the same. Now, this is one that's probably going to ruffle some feathers, but it drives me crazy. It ruffles my feathers. Male fantasy authors writing about female bodies. Now, what does that mean? Does it mean he's describing the female body quite lustily? No, of course not. That's not what I mean at all. I went on and on about fantasy authors, male fantasy authors, writing just abhorrent cringe sex scenes. Like, it's just like, oh my God, stop, please. This isn't your strong suit. Please stop it. I know it's okay to fade to black. We can put the words together. We don't need to see how the sausage is made because it's not what we're here for. And you probably missed the boat on romantasy, my brother. It doesn't work out. But actually, some are quite good at it. I've actually found some now where I say, okay, I can see these guys have done their homework and they actually have gotten some good feedback and they obviously have some good advisors. They know what they're doing. What I can't stand is male fantasy authors that are obsessed with the female menstrual cycle. It is so disgusting reading this, guys. Stop it. Get some help. You're out of your element. You do not know what you are talking about. You sound uninformed. You sound creepy. And it's just, you need to stop it. That's the end of the line. You need to stop this. It drives me crazy. And there's been several fantasy authors, I'm not going to name names, but there's several fantasy authors I have taken off of my list to read because they kept doing this every book. And I'm like, this is not your area of expertise. You sound like a damn fool. Knock it off. Get some help. Move on. Write about some things that you're really good at because this ain't it. This drives me absolutely bonkers. You don't understand. You'll never understand. You need to let it go. And that's why I've moved several of those authors off my list. Now, I'm not going to name names, like I said, but you know who you are. You know who you are. And you deserve this fury that I have for this. Please stop. It's disgusting. I can't take it much more. That's all I'll say. I think I said enough, didn't I? So that did affect my future plans several times because it's like you're obsessed at this point. You sound gross. You sound creepy. Knock it off. Knock it off. That's it. How about love triangles? Now, I've said love triangles, I think I've gone on the record several times saying I think this might be the worst thing to ever happen to storytelling. Now, J. Giles Band once said, he loves her and she loves some other guy. That's life, man. I understand that. You know what? J. Giles didn't write several albums about this topic. I don't think that love triangles have to be there with everything. I like romance. I do. I think it's really fun sometimes when you're will they, won't they? You want these characters to pair. Shipping is fine. I get that. That doesn't bother me at all. What I can't stomach is the world is ending. But how do I choose between these two very attractive people that I can't choose between? That's the real problem at hand here. Yeah. I can't stand it. It takes me completely out of the story when, again, we might be dead tomorrow. You know what? Choose one and go live your life because you might not have much left. That's what I like. We've all been there, like I said, in real life where these things happen. I can think of my childhood. I was in love with this girl and she was in love with my best friend. It happens sometime. And he was in love with someone else. So these things do happen. I get that. But I don't want to read about this. And the point where it's just like, it's its own genre now. Love triangles are just its own genre. It's pretty much called YA fantasy. But again, people think that I don't like YA fantasy. And I'm like, YA fantasy romance is what I don't like. And it's mostly because of love triangles. It drives me crazy. Especially when you have one character who knows that other character's in love with them, and they just keep stringing them along, even though they have no interest in them. That makes me hate that character. Makes me absolutely just want to shred them to where I can't read this character anymore because we've all known that person who will string someone along in case either is a backup or, hey, I can use this to my advantage somehow. Those are awful people. And when you're doing it with your protagonist, holy shit, man, nothing will make me turn against your main character faster than having him or her string another character along that they have no interest in whatsoever just because it might benefit them later. I hate it. Love triangles ruin everything in a story. I hate them. I don't use that word very often on this channel, but I can't stand them, and I would love to see them die a slow and cruel death. It would be amazing. I would love it. I would sit there with popcorn and just lick the butter off my fingers. It would be amazing. I can't stand love triangles. Please stop. Especially you, Hollywood. Stop it. We're tired of it. We don't want it anymore. I can't say we because there's a lot of people who are selling a lot of books writing love triangles. So clearly someone loves it. Me? No. Please stop. I'm begging you. I'm begging you. How about the unreliable narrator? Now, this can be done right sometimes. Sadly for me, it's been done wrong a lot. This one feels like the Monopoly get out of jail free card. So everything that makes no sense, the author can always just go back and say, oh, it's unreliable narrator. Or, fans of the series can say, well, you just misunderstood because it was unreliable narrator. Didn't you catch that? It is so aggravating because to me, it feels like the author writing in a trap door where like, hey, this villain might end up being very popular. So I want to leave the future options open to where I can flip it to being a good guy if they're super, super popular. Now I have a couple of instances here. Think Anne Rice with Lestat. In Interview with the Vampire, Lestat is awful. He is garbage. He is one of the worst things out there. He is a tormentor. He is a gaslighter. He is an awful, awful vampire. Awful. And then book 2 happens and it's like, oh, well, that was unreliable narrator. Here's my story. Here's what actually happened from my point of view. And I thought it kind of worked out because I've read several books. I love Lestat. He's one of my favorite characters in all of fiction. So clearly she did something right. So I feel like she did that right because you can look at it and say, okay, Louis was a new vampire. He was very, very clearly clinging onto his human life a lot. And I've talked about Interview with the Vampire several times on the channel and why I think it's an amazing book. But, you go into Vampire Lestat and you say, oh, this story just completely changed. Was it because Lestat was such a popular character? Maybe. Maybe Anne Rice just liked him a lot. But it worked out. When it doesn't work out, well, hey, I'm sorry to keep on picking on this one, guys, because I've done it a few times on the channel. Think about Kvothe in Kingkiller Chronicles. Everything this guy does is the greatest thing ever. He never struggles. He's the best. He's the baddest. All the women want him. All the guys want to be him. He is amazing. And anytime you bring up any of these criticisms, everyone says, well, it's unreliable narrator. He's recounting his story. Of course he's going to make himself sound like Captain Awesome, right? Of course he's going to. Hate it. I can't stand it. Because again, it feels like I can do whatever I want and no one can call me on my bullshit. I hate this writing style because it is just a way to loopholes. It's just loopholes to get out of any problem that you ever have with a story going forward. I can't stand it. I do think that there is a fine line to walk where it can work out, as I just talked about with Anne Rice. But there are many, many, many more times, and I'm not going to name more names because the King Killer fans already hate me. They're not watching this video. So I'm not worried about that. But I'm not going to name more. But there have been several series where I've quit reading it because of this. I don't like that. I don't want to think that the character is one thing, but then always be like, oh, but that could actually be bullshit in the future, and they can just say, oh, unreliable narrator, I can get away with it. This is why I think I prefer multi-POV or third-person omniscient to singular POV, because the authors don't get as lazy with it, with being able to cheat their audience by saying, you just thought that's how it was. This is how it actually was. And that drives me just a little bit bonkers. It's not really a topic, but I guess one I would just say is like young protagonists. Again, I like Farm Boy Leaves Home. I love Chosen One. And I am fine with that. I'm fine with watching these characters grow or whatever. But I think something that's kind of playing into the OP topic is you have these characters that are 13 or 14 years old, and they're going in the world and they know how to do everything. It's like, you don't know shit. You don't know shit at 14 years old. You don't. It's easy to... You can be in your 20s and look back and say, I didn't know shit when I was 14 years old. I think that super young protagonists is the reason we get a lot of Girl Boss and a lot of Gary Stu. And it's one of those where we don't want to see that. I know you're writing that for a younger audience and you want them to feel empowered. I get that. It's very, very painful to read, though. It's really, really frustrating to either see 14-year-olds not acting like a 14-year-old, they're just wise to the world like they should not be, or always having really old protagonists that just tell me about how their knees hurt and how they regret all the life decisions they made. Because look, I'm that age. My knees hurt. I think about life decisions. I don't want to do that while I'm reading fantasy. So I think there's a fine line to walk. Maybe sometimes we can make some of these protagonists, late 20s, early 30s, I think, and kind of get a nice balance there where they've seen some shit, but they still got things to learn. I think that's kind of the nice balance. But yeah, the super, super young or the really old and savvy veteran character lead protagonist is just, I don't know. I feel like there should be a balance between there somewhere. But there are some that do it just right. Or if they are really young, you can see this is a different world. People have to grow up a lot faster than they do in our world. And again, it can work, but it's a fine line that I don't feel like everyone is really hitting, and more people are missing than not. So final thoughts here, guys. Look, I know that some of these are a necessary evil to tell a fantasy story. I mean, it's just they've been around for longer than I've been alive, and I understand they work. They draw people in. A lot of people are going to like a lot of these things because, look, many of the authors all these topics I talk about, lots of these authors have used some or maybe all of these in their books, and they're selling a shit ton of books. So what do I know? That's why I always say I'm just a guy with Wi-Fi. I don't know nothing. I just tell you what I like and don't like in my books. And these are things I really don't like. I don't think it's an instant DNF or quit this author if they use one. Like I said, use sparingly. I think they're fine. You've got a love triangle in your book. You're going to have to be really, really awesome at it for me to keep going, because that's the one that really gets me hot. Stop talking about periods. It's gross. That's another one that I think is like a non-starter for me. But, again, these are just ones that have kind of turned me off at this point, to where it makes it hard for me to want to continue reading an author when they keep continually using these ones that, for lack of a better word, trigger me a little bit to where I'm like, I don't want to read you anymore because I don't like this. I can't stand it. So with these things, your mileage is going to vary, and I have lots of things. Guys, I like to be positive on this channel. There's lots of things that I love about tropes. I've always said trope isn't a bad word. Tropes are what brought me to the genre. So if you guys are interested, I would love to make a video about my favorite fantasy tropes. So you guys let me know in the comments below if that's something that you would like to see me do, because I have lots more things that I love about fantasy tropes than I do not love. So I would love to hear what some of your least favorite fantasy tropes, or if you want to tell me some of your favorite ones, that's fine. Go ahead and tell me both of them down below. I would love to know. Do you have any strong feelings about these? Did I overreact to some? Probably. I was this short of flipping a table while talking about the menstrual cycle thing, but that's just, again, I'll say it again, stop it. Get some help. So guys, drop in the comments, let me know some of your least favorite fantasy tropes, and I will talk to you there.